Good sunny afternoon. This is Angela with Permaculture. It is really warm today. I should not have worn black. The garden is still relatively asleep. You can kind of see the bones of it, but it's not really woken up yet. So I thought this would be a good time to share some of my thought processes of building raised beds. Folks can feel that raised beds are cost prohibitive because cedar is expensive, the materials are expensive. And I personally believe that permaculture should be available, approachable, achievable by anybody. And having it be affordable is really important to me. Also following the permaculture ethic of produce no waste. I don't want to have to manufacture new resources, and there is waste in the manufacture of any new material that we use in our current system. So I would prefer to reuse materials, get free scrounged materials, or just do without. So let me show you a little bit about this bed I'm building today and talk you through some of my thought processes. Okay, this is a bed that may be familiar to some of y'all from previous videos. I can't make up my mind what to do with this bed. Over the last 12 years, it has grown pumpkins and tomatoes, and originally it was my rows of garlic here. And then I've put in perennials, and then I keep taking them out. I put in my chaste tree, I took it out and moved it somewhere else. Along this fence here are comfrey plants that are just starting to wake up. So they will fill in the fence line. And then I have this Concord grape, which you can see I just finished pruning. There's a stack of, that's about a third of the pruning. So this Concord grape, and it tends to trail down the fence as well for visual appeal. I just can never make up my mind what I want to do with this bed. And that is one of the critiques I have of raised bed gardening, is that when you look at permanent raised beds, particularly with drip irrigation systems, you are committing to pretty long-term or intense labor to remove that setup. I like things I just plunk into place and I can move them around. I have bits of old broken urbanite from the sidewalk that used to run through my property that I removed a couple years in when I discovered it buried 12 inches under the ground. I also really like to use logs that I get free off Craigslist. This is my next door neighbor, owns a wonderful food cart called Rocket Breakfast. And he had a number of downed trees at his food cart pod that had lumber you could come and take after the snowstorms. And so this is maple, which is interesting. You can see the maple is actually rotted in the middle, and that's why it ended up coming down in the snowstorm. So for me, I can just pick up and move these logs if I don't want this bed to be here next year or later in the season. And I'm always really tweaking my design, and I'm a little fickle. So if something can be impermanent and changeable and adaptable, then it works better for me and my system, because the more intimately connected I become with my garden, and the more, even after more than 12 years, the more I interact with it, and my needs change, and the needs of the system change as plants mature, as I mature, I can move things. So what I did today was I took these logs and I just plunked them in. That's it, easy peasy. And then I put some extra mulch up against them. I didn't bury them, they're fresh logs, so I didn't make a hugel bed. I just want a perimeter here. And what I'm looking at is an aspirational goal. When I put in these logs here, I don't fill the soil up to the top. You can see here I have some kale coming up. I had originally planted cover crops in the fall in this bed, and I ended up covering it and moving a whole bunch of dirt and just doing a whole lot of stuff in this bed, a whole bunch of soil, I should say, not dirt. But I didn't mound it up any higher because I had a problem of the soil would slope down into the path here. So I needed this barrier. I needed something so that I could continue to build the soil up and not have it get knocked into the path. And these logs are going to be great. They're going to last several years. They're eventually going to break down into soil. As they break down, they're going to become spongy and hold water for my bed. And then In the interim, I have this aspirational goal of like, now my goal is to build soil up to the top of this log. So you can see my goal is to build this much soil between now and when these logs rot away. And I like that because I'm a really goal-oriented person. It gives me something to strive for in my soil building, because sometimes I can get a little bit complacent because it's been so many years, but I still can build tilth. I still can build that rich humus on top. And I still should be putting fertility back into the land. So I have this raised bed. I can move these logs if I want to. They will break down over time. They are impermanent. They're free. And they give me a goal of how I want to build my soil up. Now, I could come in and just throw in a bunch of compost right now if I wanted to go purchase it. I don't want to do that right now. And unfortunately, I have spread most of my finished compost elsewhere in the garden already for the spring. But for me, that is what I consider the best way to build a raised bed. Free stuff, rocks, bricks, logs, that I can move if I need to, that I don't commit any financial output to, that are not difficult to move around and change should my needs change. That, in the case of logs, are going to build fertility over time. And then also give me a barrier where I can build soil and have it be kept safe and not erode. So I think that this looks good in the long term. It's not a crisp, formal raised bed, but that's not the aesthetic I'm going for. And once it is overflowing with pumpkin vines or whatever I end up planting in this bed this year, it will look really natural and organic. Organic in the decorative sense, and organic in the functional sense, because it will break down and become soil fertility in time. So I hope that gives you a look at my thinking and processing and how I view using raised beds, and how they should be approachable for everybody, and don't feel that you have to invest in drip irrigation and cedar plank formal raised beds in order to build tilth in your garden, in order to build topsoil. You can use free, scrounged, repurposed, recycled materials and be sustainable and budget conscious and grow delicious food at the same time.